The house felt different after Gideon Cole died. It was quiet in a heavy way. Sophie moved slowly, careful with the files her father had organized by hand. His watch lay on her desk, still ticking. She held it for a moment, and then set it down. The board meeting was in the afternoon. The lawyer had asked both her and Nathaniel to come for the will. The lawyer's office had big windows and a long table. A recorder clicked on. The lawyer opened a brown envelope and spoke in a steady voice. Sophie folded her hands in her lap. Nathaniel sat across from her, leaning back like he did not care, but his knee kept bouncing. The will was clear. Gideon left the company to Sophie. He left Nathaniel a trust fund, paid out in stages, with conditions. There was no confusion in the wording. The lawyer read it twice. Sophie felt her throat tighten, but kept her face calm. She did not smile. She did not look at Nathaniel. Nathaniel stared at the table. "This is a mistake," he said. "Dad would never cut me out of the company." "It is not a mistake," the lawyer said. "He signed this 6 months ago. He discussed it with me at length." Nathaniel turned to Sophie. "What did you do? What did you tell him?" Sophie took a breath. "Nothing. He made his choice. You know that." "Don't," he snapped. His voice was low but sharp. "You know he promised me. He promised to protect the company," she said softly. "He trusted me to do that." The lawyer closed the folder and explained the next steps. Transfer of shares, board notification, insurance, security updates. The practical pieces. Nathaniel kept his eyes on Sophie, like he could force her to flinch. She did not. When it ended, they walked out in silence. In the hallway, Nathaniel caught her arm. "We can fix this," he said. "Announce that you're stepping aside. Give me the title. We'll say you're grieving and you need time." Sophie pulled her arm free. "No." His jaw worked. "You'll regret that." She watched him leave, his footsteps fast and loud. She felt cold even in the warm hallway. She pressed the elevator button and went down to the street. Outside, people were moving, laughing, carrying coffee, living like the world had not shifted. She stood still until her breath slowed. She drove to the main plant before going home. The warehouse doors were open. Machines hummed. Workers nodded to her, eyes kind, unsure. She walked the floor the way she had with her father when she was younger. He used to point to each line and tell a story about how it started, where it went wrong, how they fixed it. He always said, "We don't build products. We build trust." In his old office, the air still held a faint smell of coffee and paper. On the shelf was a small tin box. Inside was a note in his handwriting. "Sophie, if this is in your hands, it means you're ready. Protect the people first. The numbers will follow. Don't chase noise. Keep the promises I made." She sat in his chair for a moment, not to take his place, but to feel his steadiness. Her phone buzzed. A message from a senior manager. "Board wants reassurance. Are you okay to speak at 4?" She texted back. "Yes." At the meeting, she spoke simply. "We will honor our contracts, protect our teams, and serve our clients. We will not rush changes. We will keep the quality our name stands for." She did not say her brother's name. She did not mention the will. She focused on what people needed to hear, that the ground under their feet was still solid. After the call, she went to her office. The sun was low, turning the city gold. She remembered the early mornings with her father, him teaching her how to read a balance sheet without letting fear guide her decisions, him teaching her how to recognize a good idea even when it came from a quiet voice in the back of the room. He had tried to teach Nathaniel too, but Nathaniel showed up late, left early, and laughed off the boring parts. He liked the dinners more than the work. At dusk, Nathaniel showed up at her office without calling. He did not knock. He pushed the door open and walked in. "Security let you up?" she asked. "They still know who really belongs here," he said. He stood in front of her desk. "I want an answer, Sophie. Step down. Give me what's mine." "It's not yours," she said. "And you know why Dad chose this. He saw how you handled money. He saw what you did with the last 2 ventures. He wanted the company safe. I can make it bigger. You can make it burn," she said before she could stop herself. She softened her voice. "Nathaniel, I don't want to fight you. Take the trust. Start over. You're smart. You can build something without tearing this down." His smile was thin. "You're going to learn what it feels like to be shut out. Please don't do something you can't undo." He leaned close. "You think you're the hero. You're not." He left. The door clicked with a final sound. Sophie sat very still. Her hands were shaking now. Only now. She looked at the watch on her desk. The seconds kept moving. That night, she walked through the plan again, this time with the operations lead. They reviewed access logs, lighting, alarms. She did not say why she was asking, but she checked every camera, every lock. She told herself it was standard. She also knew it was not just that. At home, she tried to eat dinner and could not. She took a shower and stood under the water, eyes closed, letting the noise drown out her thoughts. When she got into bed, sleep did not come. She stared at the ceiling and listened to the quiet room. Her phone lit up on the nightstand. A message from an unknown number. This is not over. She sat up and turned on the light. She read it again. She did not reply. She saved the message and set the phone face down. Her heart beat hard, but she breathed in and out until it slowed. In the morning, she woke before dawn and drove to the river. She parked and watched the water move in slow, steady lines. She thought of her father's note. Protect the people first. Keep the promises I made. She nodded to herself, as if he were there and she was answering him out loud. Back at the office, she drafted a letter to the staff. Short, clear, honest. Then she paused with her fingers on the keyboard. The feeling in her chest returned. The feeling from the hallway after the will. The feeling from the text in the night. It was a warning. She picked up her phone, scrolled to a number she had saved but never used, and pressed call. When the line clicked, she said, "My name is Sophie Cole. I need help watching someone I love, because I'm afraid he might hurt what our father built." The voice on the other end was calm. "Tell me everything." The rain tapped against Sophie's office window the next afternoon. She sat at her desk, the blinds half drawn, staring at a list of names her assistant had handed her. Potential new clients. Important meetings. All the things her father would have pushed her to focus on. But Sophie's mind was not on numbers or growth. It was on her brother. Nathaniel had been quiet for 2 days, and that silence scared her more than his anger. Silence meant he was planning something. She thought back to the message that had appeared on her phone in the middle of the night. This is not over. She had not told anyone about it, not even her closest friend at the company. Some things you kept hidden until you understood the danger. At noon, she received a call. It was Eleanor Hayes, the investigator she had contacted the day after reading her father's note. Eleanor had been in the police for 15 years before opening her own firm. Her voice was calm, but her words were sharp. "Your brother has been meeting with men who aren't exactly business partners," she said. "They're the kind of people who take cash to look the other way." Sophie's stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" "He's desperate. He's deep in debt. Casinos, failed investments, loans from people who want their money back. He's running out of time, and he thinks destroying your control of the company will save him." Sophie gripped the phone harder. "So he's not going to stop?" "No," Eleanor said. "Not unless you prepare for him." When the call ended, Sophie closed her eyes for a moment. Her father's voice echoed in her head. "Protect the people first. The numbers will follow." She opened her eyes, steady again. She picked up the phone and called the head of security. "From tonight," she said, "no one enters the warehouse without clearance. Update the cameras. Change the access codes. Don't tell anyone why." That evening, as the sun set and the last workers left the building, Sophie stayed behind. She walked the quiet halls, heels clicking softly against the marble floor. The warehouse was dark except for the red glow of security lights. She stood at the entrance, staring at the giant machines, the stacked crates, the smell of oil and steel. This was what her father built, and she would not let Nathaniel destroy it. Her phone buzzed again. A message from Eleanor. He just bought gasoline. Large amounts. Sophie froze. She read the line 3 times. Gasoline. There was no mistake now. Nathaniel wasn't just threatening, he was preparing. She typed back quickly, "Keep watching. Tell me where he goes." She drove home, gripping the steering wheel so hard her knuckles turned white. She parked in front of her apartment, sat in the car for a long time, and finally whispered out loud, "Dad, I'll stop him. I promise." The next day, Nathaniel appeared in her office without warning. He didn't knock, he never did. He closed the door behind him and leaned against it, arms folded. His suit was wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot, but his smile was practiced. "You're working late these days," he said. "I have responsibilities," Sophie replied evenly. "You're not cut out for this. You were always the cautious one. Afraid of risks. Afraid of power. Dad didn't see that, but I do." Sophie set her pen down. "Dad saw everything. That's why he chose me." His jaw tightened. "You'll regret standing in my way." She didn't answer. She only looked at him until he finally turned and walked out. But as the door shut, she felt the weight of his words sink in. He wasn't bluffing. That night, Sophie met Eleanor at a quiet cafe. Eleanor slid a small envelope across the table. Inside were photographs. Nathaniel at a gas station, filling cans. Nathaniel with a man in a dark jacket passing him a lighter. Nathaniel in front of the warehouse, standing too close for comfort. "Why show me this?" Sophie whispered. "Why not the police?" "Because sometimes family does stupid things they can't take back," Eleanor said. "You still have a chance to stop him before it becomes a crime too big to hide." Sophie looked down at the photos again. Her hands shook. "And if I don't stop him? Then you'll lose more than a building," Eleanor said quietly. "You'll lose your father's legacy. And maybe your brother too." Later, alone in her apartment, Sophie placed the photographs on her desk. She stared at them for hours, replaying her father's last words to her. "Protect the people first. Keep the promises I made." She knew then that she couldn't simply hope Nathaniel would calm down. She had to be ready for the moment he finally snapped. And deep down, she feared that moment was coming soon. When she finally turned off the light and went to bed, she didn't sleep. Her eyes stayed open, staring into the darkness. Every sound from outside, every car door, every distant shout, made her sit up straight. She could almost feel it. Nathaniel was getting closer to making his move. And she knew the next time he came, it wouldn't be to argue. It would be to destroy. The night was still when it happened. The city outside was alive with its usual sounds. Cars in the distance, a dog barking somewhere. But inside the coal warehouse, silence hung heavy. Only the hum of security lights broke it. Sophie had stayed late at the office that evening, working through contracts, but her mind never left the thought of Nathaniel. Every hour she expected a call from Eleanor. Every minute she waited for proof that her brother was about to act. The proof came just after midnight. Her phone buzzed against the desk, and she grabbed it. A short text from Eleanor. "He's here." "Warehouse." "Gasoline." Her chest tightened. Sophie stood quickly, her chair rolling back against the wall. She grabbed her coat and hurried to the car. The streets were slick with rain, reflecting the streetlights in long lines of gold. She drove fast, her mind a blur of fear and determination. This was it, the moment she had dreaded and prepared for. At the warehouse, Nathaniel's figure moved in the shadows. He wore a black jacket, hood pulled low, his posture tense. In his hands, a canister of gasoline. He pried open a side door and slipped inside. Cameras hidden by Eleanor's team caught every movement. Every step, every turn, every spill of liquid across the concrete floor. Inside, the smell of gasoline spread quickly. Nathaniel moved with urgency, splashing it in wide arcs over the stacked crates. The machinery, the very foundation of what their father had built. His hands shook as he worked, but his face was locked in grim determination. He pulled a lighter from his pocket, flicking it open and shut, the flame catching briefly before snapping out again. Outside, Sophie's car screeched to a stop. She didn't rush in. Instead, she called Eleanor, who was already on site with 2 firefighters she had tipped off earlier. "He's inside," Sophie whispered, staring at the dark building. "He's going to do it." "He already tried," Eleanor replied. "The sprinklers and alarms will trigger. He won't get far. But you need to see this for yourself." Sophie stepped out into the rain, her shoes sinking slightly into the wet gravel. She stood at the edge of the building, her heart hammering as she watched smoke begin to curl up from the corner where Nathaniel had lit the first flame. The alarm shrieked almost instantly, red lights flashing as sprinklers burst to life, drowning the gasoline before it could spread. The fire sputtered, hissing under the sudden downpour of water. Nathaniel cursed loudly, kicking the canister. He tried again, striking the lighter over and over, but the water rained down mercilessly. In his rage, he didn't notice the cameras above his head, blinking red, recording every detail. Sophie's chest felt heavy, but she forced herself to walk forward. She stopped just short of the doorway, where she could see him silhouetted against the flashing alarms. He turned at the sound of her footsteps. For a moment, brother and sister stood frozen in the chaos. The shriek of alarms, the spray of sprinklers, the smell of smoke thick around them. "What are you doing here?" he shouted over the noise. "I could ask you the same," Sophie replied, her voice steady though her hands trembled at her sides. His face twisted. "You left me no choice. This company was supposed to be mine. This company was Dad's," she said firmly. "And you just tried to burn it down." He shook his head, water dripping from his hair. "I was supposed to run it. He knew I could. You stole it from me." Sophie's eyes burned, but she did not cry. Dad saw who you were, Nathaniel. He saw what you do when you get desperate. And tonight, you proved him right. He looked at her then, truly looked, and for a moment his mask cracked. His eyes shone with something deeper than anger, something close to pain or maybe shame, but it was gone as quickly as it appeared. He turned and shoved past her, sprinting into the night. By the time firefighters rushed in to contain the last of the smoke, Nathaniel had vanished into the shadows. Sophie stood near the doorway, soaked through, watching the flashing lights and listening to the hiss of water against the floor. Eleanor joined her, a calm presence in the storm. "You have him on tape," Eleanor said, holding up her small monitor. "Every second of it. He won't escape this." Sophie's throat felt tight. She nodded once, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't want it to come to this. But he made his choice," Eleanor reminded her. Sophie turned her face to the rain. Her father's words came back to her again. "Protect the people first. Keep the promises I made." She whispered them under her breath, almost like a prayer. That night, as firefighters finished their work and police took statements, Sophie realized the truth. Nathaniel had crossed a line he could never come back from. He hadn't just threatened her anymore. He had tried to destroy everything. And now, she would have to decide what kind of sister she would be, the one who forgave or the one who fought back with everything she had. The morning after the fire, Sophie sat in her office with the blinds half closed. A cup of untouched coffee cooled on her desk. The warehouse smelled faintly of smoke, even after the firefighters had cleared the scene. Outside her window, the city carried on as if nothing had happened, cars moving, people hurrying to work. But Sophie knew her world had changed forever. Her phone buzzed. Eleanor's name lit the screen. Sophie answered quickly. "They're ready," Eleanor said. "The police have the footage, the statements, the proof of the gasoline purchase. He can't deny it." Sophie closed her eyes. For a brief second, she saw Nathaniel as the boy who used to run beside her in the yard, chasing kites their father made. But the image faded. Last night's vision of him holding a lighter in his hands, trying to burn everything their father built, was stronger. "Do it," she whispered. By noon, the police found Nathaniel at his apartment. He didn't resist when they knocked. Neighbors later said he had been pacing all morning, chain-smoking on the balcony, muttering to himself. As they put the cuffs on him, he shouted, "She stole it from me. It was mine." His voice echoed down the hallways, but no one came to defend him. News spread fast. Cole family scandal. Son arrested for attempted arson. Headlines ran in every paper. Board members called Sophie non-stop, worried about the company's reputation. She met with them in the conference room, standing tall despite the weight pressing down on her shoulders. "This company will not fall because of one man's mistakes," she told them firmly. "My father built this place on trust, and I intend to honor that. We will rebuild the warehouse. We will keep our contracts. We will not let gossip destroy us." Her voice did not tremble once. When she finished, the room was silent, then slowly heads began to nod. The board voted unanimously to stand behind her. Days later, the court hearing began. Sophie sat in the front row, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Nathaniel was brought in wearing a gray suit that no longer fit him properly. His eyes were sunken, his face pale. When he saw her, he smirked, but it was thin and shaky. The judge read the charges: attempted arson, corporate sabotage, reckless endangerment. The evidence was overwhelming: video footage, eyewitness reports, receipts for gasoline. Eleanor's testimony sealed the case. Nathaniel's lawyer tried to argue stress, grief, financial pressure, but it couldn't erase what he had done. When it was Sophie's turn to speak, she stood and walked to the front. Her voice was steady but heavy with emotion. "My father, Gideon Cole, gave his life to build this company. He believed in hard work, in loyalty, in family. He trusted me to carry that forward. My brother," she paused, glancing at Nathaniel, "chose destruction. I cannot change his choice. But I can protect what my father left behind." Nathaniel's face twisted. For the first time, his voice cracked. "You think you're better than me. You always did. Dad loved me too." The judge banged the gavel, silencing him. The trial ended with a guilty verdict. Nathaniel was sentenced to prison and left with crushing debts. Sophie visited him once, weeks later. The prison was gray, the visiting room colder than she expected. Nathaniel sat across from her, his hands shackled to the table. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Then he looked up, his eyes red. "Why did you do this to me?" he asked quietly. Sophie shook her head. "I didn't do this to you, Nathaniel. You did it to yourself. Tears welled in his eyes, though he tried to blink them away. Dad should have chosen me. Dad saw the truth, she said softly. And now so do you. Silence stretched between them. Sophie stood, her chair scraping against the floor. She looked down at him one last time. Dad trusted me. Now you know why. She walked out without turning back. Months later, the warehouse was repaired. Workers returned, machines roared to life, and coal industries pushed forward stronger than before. Sophie often stayed late, walking the floor the way her father once did. She would pause at his old office, touch the tin box on the shelf, and remember his note, "Protect the people first. Keep the promises I made." She had done that. At a cost she wished she never had to pay, but she had done it. And though Nathaniel's name was now spoken in whispers, Sophie carried hers with quiet strength. She hadn't just inherited a company. She had inherited her father's trust, and she would never let it burn.